What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly Sports History for June 15th, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Although I feel like Bill O'Reilly today. Just had about a 20-minute fight with my earphones, and I feel like I just said, F it, let's do it live. But here we are. Welcome to a Saturday edition of the podcast. It's going to be a beautiful day out there. Let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, the fact that the Celtics are on the verge, which they got blown out, more on that later, on the verge of winning their 18th championship, and the Sixers are not even close to that right now. My question to you was, is it Joe's fault who gets a ton of blame, or is it the front office? 88% of you agreed with me that it is the front office, and I feel as though, for the most part, in kind of thinking back on a lot of this, the front office is not necessarily set him up for success, or even really, from what I kind of get and understand, not even giving him any sort of input into who they get. You got Bryce Harper with the Phillies, who goes and has a lot of input and a lot to say, but Joe not so much. In basketball, more than any other sport, I feel like you need to have that sort of chemistry and things like that. But hopefully maybe they're going to take some of Joe's input or advice, or just see who he might want to play with. We'll see, though. We should find out more in the coming weeks. But as always, thank you for participating in the question of the day. There'll be another one later in the show. So as we're talking about Joe, he was in the news yesterday, so let's continue to talk about it. He was on the ESPN pregame show for the finals game last night, and they asked him about just a couple things on the Celtics, and had a standard which I think probably he will not get as much credit for as he should, but like the ultimate Philly answer, and was like, I can't stand them. I can't stand them. I hate Boston. He's like, nothing against the fans or the team or anything. He's like, I just can't stand them. And I like that. I like that a lot. They were talking about whether or not they could be a dynasty, and he was very adamant and said, no, there will not be anybody. It won't be a dynasty because half of the East, including myself, was hurt for most of the year, which I like that. And basically saying, listen, the East is tough. It's just everybody was injured last year. We just need to add some pieces. And coincidentally, sitting next to him was Paul George, and he kind of gave him the sort of side eye when he said that. So I only mentioned asking Joe's opinion because I don't know if that means then he might want to play with Paul George, which still is not the top choice I would want. But I don't know if you kind of throw him a bone or get input from Joe. And if Joe and Tyrese want to necessarily play with Paul George, maybe you keep them happy and that looks a little different. But there was just something about the way he spoke. Like I've never seen him really that animated, that confident in things that are not soccer. So I don't know. Maybe they're going to seek his input. Maybe he wants Paul George. And while it's not my top choice, I'm not the one playing with him. And if he thinks that Paul George is going to be the guy that he can play with and help get them over the top, who am I to argue with the best player in the NBA when he is healthy and just the most dominant player? And a lot of people, Rick Brunson was just, or Jalen Brunson, not Rick. Rick is his dad from Temple. But Jalen Brunson was talking about just how dominant he is and how he gets a bad rap and the teams around him. And I really do believe that. I mean, yes, there are some performances in the playoffs where he didn't do well. But he was playing on one leg with Bell's palsy and still was dominating. So I think you need to get those players around him, specifically on the bench. And you notice that a lot last night's game aside, when Jason Tatum goes to the bench, the Celtics don't completely fall apart. So that is where I would focus on. However, if he wants to play with Paul George and Paul George is willing to sign here, I'm not, again, it's going to be what it is, and it's not my top choice. However, I do think that Joe should have some sort of, especially in basketball. In football, it's a little bit different. Baseball, to a certain point, But in basketball, you have to have that chemistry. And part of why they didn't win early in Joe's career was somewhat in part to Ben Simmons and Joel not necessarily meshing their styles of play. And that matters a lot. So let's hope that Joe knows what he's talking about. And I do think you have this 3-year window. He is your MVP caliber player. He should have some input on what players play around him and what happens. So we'll see. But it was just I actually enjoyed listening and watching the clips and everything because there was just a different sort of vibe about Joe last night. He was comfortable with what he was doing. He seemed confident. And was very quick to say, no, they're not going to be a dynasty. I mean, who knows? We'll see. And then the Celtics did come out and get blown out, which sucks because it just extends everything another day. And now they get to win it in Boston and blah, 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 blah. I hate the Celtics. I'm like Joe. I hate them. I can't stand them as an organization, as a team, as a fan base. And to borrow a line from Tupac, if you want to be down with the Boston Celtics, I can't stand you either. Anyway, couple quick housekeeping notes. The nickname tournament is coming. We are less than a week away from the Selection Friday show where all the brackets and all the names will be unveiled. 64 teams, 4 regions, 2 matchups a day. You guys, the listeners of this day in Philly sports history, will decide the ultimate Philly sports nickname. Get in, start following me on social media, Jimbo_Mont, Twitter and TikTok, at Philly Jimbo on Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont, leave reviews, all that other good stuff. Tell your friends, spread the word. I've been constantly, wherever I go now, I just leave business cards with all the contact and information you need. So if you found my business card, whether it's, I leave them everywhere. So if you found it, welcome. Hit me up and let me know. But as far as voting goes, I've been toying around the past couple weeks. So if you do listen to the clips or watch the clips on TikTok or even Instagram, what I've been doing is I've been starting to put the polls for the question of the day on both of those platforms. So expanding our reach a little bit and getting it on. But the nickname tournament kicks off on June 24th. The Selection Friday show will be next Friday. I am beyond excited for it. But like I said, spread the word, hit me up on social media, subscribe, and all that other good stuff. All right, Phillies, 5-3 win in 11 innings, and what a game. The atmosphere was just incredible. Schwarber led off the game with a homer, Marchand hit a homer, and then Bohm got it done in the 10th with a 2-run or the 11th with a 2-run double. Should have won it in 10, but Kerkering and Marchand sort of got crossed up in the wild pitch. Marchand made a great play to try to get the guy at home, but he was safe. But what an atmosphere. The Phillies fans were in full force. The Orioles fans were in full force. Lots of chants going on. It was just a great atmosphere and just a little slice of October here in June. And it's just, I'm so excited for this team. I mean, Ranger bounced back 6 2/3, 6 Ks. The bullpen was great. Sir Anthony looked well. Kerkering looked well. Alvarado looked well. So I like, hopefully part of what happened in Boston was just sort of the London hangover. But what a game. And like I said, the atmosphere, and I did stay up. The rain delay, I'm like, it got to a certain point. I was like, starting to doze off. I was getting tired. I'm like, you know what? I'm this far invested now. I have to stay up to watch the end. So luckily for me, they did win it in the 11th, but they're back at it today. Taijuan Walker, hopefully he can build on that outing he had in London because this is going to be a tough one. And then we got Zach Wheeler tomorrow, but looking forward to this afternoon's game as well. But the Phils, 5-3 in 11 innings over the Orioles. I've been telling you about the shoes at Philly Goat. Go check them out. I can't wait. We're going out today to the movies and then the pool. Cannot wait to wear them because they're that comfortable. So go check out the canvas loafers, men's and women's sizes, by the way. So you don't have to try to do the conversion because I know shoe sizes for some reason are different for men and women, but they have you covered. Go phillygoat.com. Check out their selection and then use the promo code Jim Montgomery at checkout for 10% off your order. These shoes are amazing. Get a few pair today. We have no Mishkov updates. It's starting to quiet down. It's possible that the Stanley Cup Finals will end tonight, so maybe we'll start seeing things heating up once the finals are over. But as of now, no update on Mishkov. All right, so this story will not go away, and now they're starting to become more. And again, I don't know what the end goal here is, but now apparently Jalen's comments or lack thereof about Sirianni at the press conference disappointed some key figures within the organization. Now, I'm not really sure why this was leaked to the beat writers and why they just didn't go to Jalen. Like, I don't know. There's just something still not adding up about this. I still personally don't think there was anything wrong with what he said. But, I mean, and if that's what you're looking for from Jalen, have you told him that? Like, have you had these conversations? There's just a lot going on to it. Not really sure I understand it. But we'll see. It's definitely at this point worth monitoring. Is he mad because Brian Johnson's not there? Is he just not a fan of Nick Sirianni? And if that's the case, you got to make a decision. Are you keeping Sirianni or are you keeping Hurts? Like, there's just so many layers that it's just not making much sense to me right now. But I will continue to monitor it. I think Jalen just needs to come out and say, I support coach or something. Like, that would solve all of this. But his silence, the Eagles' silence, because the Eagles aren't saying anything either. They're leaking stories. So I don't know if it is a story or just it's June. The Sixers aren't playing, the Flyers aren't playing, and you can only talk so much Phillies a day, and that's where this is coming from. But we'll see. I will continue to monitor it. But that does lead to today's question of the day. This discussion has come up a couple times this week, so I figured I talked a little bit about it earlier in the week, but I figured I'd bring it to you. And this is in no way, shape, or form bashing Jalen. However, given the choice with the current team, do you want Jalen Hurts as your quarterback or do you want prime Donovan McNabb? Because there's a lot of talk about Jalen this and so just throw it out there. Have a little bit of fun with this today. Prime Donovan McNabb or Jalen Hurts as the quarterback of this team. 267-495-8531 get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. But which guy do you want as your quarterback, or if you could choose on a fantasy playing Madden simulation? Who do you want, Prime Donovan or Jalen? Let me know on any of the social media. 267-495-8531. You can send a text message. You can give me a voicemail, whatever. But let me know, Prime Donovan or Jalen now as your quarterback of this team as constructed. And let's see where we can go with it and have some fun. Basically testing out to see, because there's a lot of Jalen hate, a lot of Donovan McNabb hate. Who do you hate the least, I guess? But we'll see. Let me know your thoughts on that. All right, today we're going to go back to 1991. And an immaculate inning in baseball is when a pitcher uses 9 pitches to strike out the side. And it's a very, very rare feat. It has happened only 114 times in Major League Baseball history. About a third more rare, I guess if my math is correct. There's been 3 times as more no-hitters and players hitting for the cycles roughly as there have been immaculate innings. So it's one of those things, not quite as rare as a perfect game, but definitely more rare than no-hitters and players hitting for the cycle. So all of that to say, on this day back in 1991, Andy Ashby pitched an immaculate inning for the Phillies versus the Reds. In the top of the 4th inning, he struck out Hal Mars, Todd Benzinger, Jeff Reed, all swinging on 9 pitches to get the Reds retired. Now, Ashby was not great that game. He was, I guess, serviceable. Pitched 5 innings, gave up 3 runs, had only 5 strikeouts, so 3 of his 5 came in that immaculate inning. This was the 3rd time a Phillies pitcher had pitched an immaculate inning. Bill Wilson and Robin Roberts had the others. Since Andy Ashby has done it, Juan Perez did it in 2011, and then Cole Hamels did it in 2014. The Phillies, to their credit, have been on the receiving end of an immaculate inning 9 times, which is kind of ridiculous. But on this day, back in 1991, Andy Ashby pitched an immaculate inning for the Phillies against the Reds, striking out Hal Morris, Todd Benzinger, Jeff Reed, all swinging, by the way, is even more impressive on that. However, the Phillies could not win the game. They lost 3-1, despite the fact that Andy Ashby, for one inning anyway, was perfect and the best you could actually be. Finally today, from one Phillies struggling pitcher in the 80s and 90s to another, today's Phillies Memory Lane spotlight is Kevin Gross. Kevin was selected by the Phillies with the 11th overall pick in the secondary free agent draft in 1981. Not real sure what that means, but it was the secondary and he was the 11th overall pick. He ended up pitching 6 years in Philly, including 17 games during the 83 season when the Phillies went to the World Series, lost to the Orioles. During his time in Philly, he went 60 and 66, had a pretty respectable 3.87 ERA, 23 complete games, 7 shutouts, 727 Ks. He did some starting, pitched in relief a little bit. But some of his, probably the thing he's most remembered for, or at least I remember him for, he was suspended for 10 games in 1987 for scuffing the ball. Dude had sandpaper in his glove to get an edge and got caught. So he had a 10-game suspension for that. He was an All-Star in 1988 where he went 12-14 with a 3.69 ERA, 5 complete games and a shutout. He was traded after that All-Star season in 1988 to Montreal for Floyd Yeomans and Jeff Parrott. Both guys I remember, well, maybe not so fondly, but vividly. I remember those guys being on the Phillies. Kevin Gross did have a 15-year career, pitched a no-hitter for the Dodgers in 1992. But for me, unfulfilled expectations and the fact that he got suspended for having sandpaper in his glove. Not very, I guess they didn't check, well, not I guess, they didn't check the gloves and everything like they do now, but come on, dude, sandpaper in your glove, be better than that. But today's Phillies Memory Lane spotlight of the day is Kevin Gross, pitcher for the Phillies. Had a pretty okay career with the Phillies, nothing spectacular. Did go on to pitch a no-hitter against the Dodgers, and he also gave up Rafael Palmeiro's last career home run. So that's a pretty cool claim to fame, I guess, for him. But Kevin Gross is today's Phillies Memory Lane spotlight. On this day in 1991, Andy Ashby pitched an immaculate inning for the Phillies against the Reds, but could not get the job done, losing 3-1 to the Reds. It has only happened five times total in Phillies history, last being in 2014 by Cole Hamels. The Phillies, to their credit, have had it happen against them 9 times. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm surprised nobody on this team, to be honest, has ever had it happen. But anyway, be sure to answer the question of the day. Prime Donovan or Jalen as your quarterback of this team. 267-495-8531. Get you in on the Back to the Future voice and text line. What are your thoughts, too, on Jalen, the whole deal with Jalen's comments or lack thereof? Is this a story? Is it because we're in the dog days and we're bored? Let me know your thoughts on that. Also, let me know your thoughts on the Joe. If Joe wants Paul George, does that change your thought process on that? And it kind of does for me, only because if he's that adamant about it, they haven't listened to him in the past because I'm sure he would have rather kept Jimmy Butler. But, I mean, if it's going to make the big guy happy, listen, whatever's going to keep him happy, I think, is what, I don't know. I mean, what you've been doing has not been working, so maybe let Joe play amateur GM and see if he can do a better job. I mean, like I said, you cannot do any worse than what the Sixers have been doing. So let me know your thoughts on that and anything Philly sports related. Get it off your chest. Let me know. Let's have some fun. Spread the word. Get ready for this nickname tournament. It is going to be a beautiful day out there, so get out and enjoy it. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for June 15th, 2024. I'm Jim Montgomery, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.